Welcome back, everybody. You know how we do things here. It's time for another deep dive, and this time we're headed straight to Hogwarts. Well, maybe not literally, but we are going to dive deep into the casting decisions for the Harry Potter films, and more specifically, the iconic role of Albus Dumbledore. After Richard Harris passed away, it was a big question, like, who could possibly step into those shoes?
It's true. It's always tough replacing an actor in a role like that, someone everyone already loves. It's not just about looking the part, but really capturing that essence, especially when the original actor left such a strong impression.
Yeah, for sure. And with Dumbledore, they really had a tough choice to make. They wanted to honor Harris's legacy, of course, but they also had to make sure the character could evolve, especially with the later films getting more and more complex.
Absolutely, and some big names were considered. I mean, just imagine, each of them bringing something totally different to the table. There was even talk of Peter O'Toole taking the role, which would have been incredible, right? He and Richard Harris were lifelong friends, so it would have been like this really fitting tribute.
Oh, yeah. That would have been amazing to see. But I get why he declined. I mean, to step into your best friend's shoes like that, it's got to come with a lot of emotional weight. But then it gets really interesting. Because you know who else they considered? Sir Ian McKellen.
Yeah.
Gandalf himself.
Wow. McKellen as Dumbledore. I wonder what the public would have thought about that. Would they have accepted him as Dumbledore? Or would it have been like, too much Gandalf?
Right. It's almost like there's this rule, this unwritten rule in Hollywood about playing multiple iconic characters.
Yeah.
Especially in the same genre. But there's more to the McKellen story, believe it or not.
Yeah.
It gets a little shady, I guess you could say. See, Harris had once made this comment about certain actors, McKellen being one of them. He called them technically brilliant but passionless.
Ooh, that's gotta sting. It's really interesting, though, when you think about it. Like, Harris's comment gives us this peek into different acting styles, Maybe he felt that some actors focus too much on technique and not enough on the raw emotion. It speaks to this bigger debate about what makes good acting.
Absolutely, and it gets more complicated. Because McKellen, even though he disagreed with that assessment, he actually ended up turning down the role. Out of respect for Harris's opinion, he basically said that he couldn't accept a role, knowing the previous actor had disapproved of him.
Wow. That says a lot about his character. Even if he felt it wasn't fair, he still chose to honor Harris's memory. It could be seen as respectful, absolutely, but also kind of like a quiet disagreement with that whole assessment. It's really up to the listener to decide how they see it.
Yeah, for sure. It definitely adds a whole new layer, doesn't it? Because it shows that casting isn't just about talent. It's about personal relationships and navigating those Hollywood waters. But this brings up another big question. Would McKellen have actually made a good Dumbledore?
That's the thing with what ifs, right? It's impossible to know for sure. McKellen's an amazing actor, obviously. But that Gandalf image is so strong, maybe audiences wouldn't have been able to separate the two.
I see what you mean. It might have been tough for people to see him as anyone else, which wouldn't be fair to either character, really. But, speaking of different interpretations, Michael Gambon did ultimately get the role,
Yeah.
right? And he definitely brought a totally different energy to Dumbledore.
He did. He had this real gravitas, especially in those later movies when things got darker.
Yeah. It was like there was always this intensity there, just simmering below the surface. Remember that scene in Goblet of Fire when he finds out Harry's name came out of the goblet? It's like he's practically shaking with anger.
Oh, totally. You wouldn't really picture Richard Harris's Dumbledore reacting that way. Gambon was more active, more like a force to be reckoned with.
Exactly. And it's interesting because Gambon himself said that he didn't base his performance on Harris at all. He wanted to bring something totally fresh, and it worked, I think.
It did. He wasn't afraid to do his own thing, He understood that just copying wouldn't help the story. He brought his own interpretation, and it really resonated.
It really did. He totally made the role his own. And thinking about how different that is from what McKellen might have done. It's fascinating, right? McKellen comes from Shakespearean theater, so he's known for that precision, that technical skill.
I see what you mean. It makes me think that McKellen might have gone for a more classical style, focused on the technique, the vocal projection, all of that, while Gambon seemed more intuitive, more driven by emotion.
It's like two different schools of thought, two ways to approach a character.
Yeah.
And both are valid, It just goes to show that there can be more than one right way to play a role.
Absolutely, and that's what keeps these characters alive in our minds, Long after the movies are over, it starts these discussions, debates, even fan theories.
For sure. And then you have Fantastic Beasts, right? That give us a younger Dumbledore played by Jude Law, which brings in a whole other dimension to how to play the same character. but at different ages.
It's true. It's like peeling back the layers, getting to see more and more. With Jude Law, we see a more playful side of Dumbledore, even flirtatious. He's still brilliant, but there's this youthful energy and like a hint of mischief that we don't see in the older Dumbledore.
It's so interesting, right? Because we know where he ends up,
Yeah.
but then we see these glimpses into his past, the things that shaped him into that wise wizard we know from Harry Potter.
Yeah. It reminds us that even the most iconic figures, they have a history, a journey that led them to where they are. And seeing those earlier chapters, it can help us understand them better, appreciate just how complex they really are.
Absolutely. It goes back to what you said earlier about that ripple effect. One casting choice, one performance can change everything. And with Dumbledore, we've been lucky enough to see 3 amazing actors, each bringing their own magic to the role.
Couldn't agree more. And we as the audience, we get this rich tapestry of interpretations to think about and enjoy.
So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive into Dumbledore, I want to hear from you, the listeners. Who do you think best captured Dumbledore? Was it Harris's warmth, Gambon's power, or maybe Law's youthful charm? It's something to really think about.
Something to think about for sure.
It's amazing how these casting choices can really get people talking. Makes you wonder about some of the other actors they considered. Like, did you know Sean Connery was in the running at one point?
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah. Can you imagine him as Dumbledore?
That's a tough one. I mean, Connery's got that presence, right? That ability to just own a scene. He might have brought something more authoritative,
Yeah.
Maybe even a little mischievous.
Oh, totally. I can practically hear him delivering those classic Dumbledore lines. But with a Scottish accent.
Right.
But it also makes you think about how an actor's past roles can kind of affect how we see them in new ones. Would we have been able to separate Connery's James Bond from Dumbledore?
It's the challenge for any actor, I think. Taking on a character everyone knows so well, it's like this balancing act. Their own persona versus what the role demands. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
And that's got to be tough for the casting directors. All those factors to consider. It's not just about finding someone who can act, but finding the right fit for the whole story, the tone, the other actors.
Yeah, it's true. It's like trying to solve a puzzle, finding that missing piece that makes everything click. And sometimes the most unexpected choice can be the one that works best.
That's a good point. And I think in the end, they found the right pieces.
Yeah.
With Gambon and with Law, they both brought something unique to Dumbledore, but without losing that core essence of the character.
Exactly, and that's what makes these conversations so interesting. It reminds us that there's no one right way to interpret things, whether it's a character, a story, even just a line of dialogue. It's an invitation to look deeper, question our own assumptions, and appreciate how much artistry goes into bringing these stories to life.
It's like opening up a pensive of possibilities. And it makes me appreciate the Harry Potter films even more. It's not just a story, it's this whole collaboration of talent, vision, even magic, I'd say.
Absolutely. The magic of storytelling, the magic of acting, and the magic that happens when those two things come together perfectly.
Yeah, that's it, exactly. Well, everyone, we've reached the end of our deep dive into Dumbledore and all the thought that goes into casting a role like that. I hope you've enjoyed this behind-the-scenes look with us. Remember, there's always more to discover, more to think about. So keep those imaginations working and those conversations going. Until next time, may your own deep dives be full of wonder and insight.
And you know what else is interesting? It makes you think about the impact of those casting decisions. Like, imagine if they had gone with someone completely different. How would that have changed our whole perception of Dumbledore?
Oh, for sure. I mean, even with the actors they did choose, Harris, Gambon, Law, they each brought something unique to the role, right?
Exactly. It's like they each embodied a different facet of the character. Harris had that warmth and kindness.
Yeah.
Gambon brought that power and authority.
And
Law showed us that youthful energy, that hint of mischief.
It's like seeing a different side of the same coin.
Yeah.
And all of them, together, they create this more complete picture of who Dumbledore really is.
Absolutely. It's a reminder that characters, even fictional ones, they can be complex, multifaceted, just like real people.
And you know what else I love about this whole conversation? It makes you think about the what ifs, right? Like, what if McKellen had accepted the role? Or what if they'd gone with someone completely unexpected?
It's fun to imagine, isn't it?
It is. It's like we're opening up a whole new world of possibilities.
And it shows that these casting choices, they're not just random decisions, they're deliberate choices that shape how we experience the story.
Totally. It's like they're adding their own brushstrokes to the painting, creating something truly unique.
And it's up to us as the audience to appreciate all those different layers, to engage with those choices and think about why they were made.
I couldn't agree more. And, at the end of the day, it's that engagement, that thoughtfulness, that makes these stories come alive for us.
It's true. It's what keeps us coming back for more.
Well said. And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up our deep dive into Dumbledore.
I agree. It's been a fascinating journey.
It really has. Thank you all for joining us as we explored the ins and outs of casting and the impact it has on our beloved characters. Remember, the magic of storytelling doesn't end when the credits roll, so keep exploring, keep questioning, keep those imaginations running wild. Until next time, happy deep diving, everyone.